Welcome. My name is Will Moss. I'm the CEO of HBCU Connect. And this evening or this afternoon, depending on where you're from, we are presenting opportunities with Deloitte. So we're super excited to have the Deloitte team that's going to present not only the opportunities that are available, but they're also going to present and introduce themselves and what they do at the company. So this will be a great opportunity for you to ask questions, for you to network. And let me talk a little bit about our history with Deloitte. So this is not our first event with Deloitte. This is maybe our first event virtually, due to the COVID-19 pandemic. But HBCU Connect has been doing events to help HBCU graduates and diverse professionals get opportunities within corporate America and different companies that we work with. And we've actually done several events already with the Deloitte team. So some of you may be aware, we've done events in the Atlanta area for consulting opportunities with Deloitte. Deloitte is a huge company, as you guys may already know, because we have a pretty great turnout. There's already over 180 people on this call, but a great company to work for, some great employees and team members that represent the company that are sharing and volunteering their time this evening to get you excited about opportunities with Deloitte to answer your questions. So definitely leverage the chat to ask questions, to introduce yourself as well. Now, if this is your first HBCU Connect event, our company has been around since 1999. We're the largest organization for students and graduates from historically Black colleges and universities. This was a passion project for me many years ago that turned into what I do for a living and about 16 of my team members all across the country. So we're here to help you land opportunities. We're here to connect you with companies like Deloitte that are looking for great talent. So definitely take advantage of this opportunity because these types of opportunities don't come every day. So this is a specific diversity recruitment outreach effort by Deloitte. So kudos to the Deloitte team and thank you to the Deloitte team. But without further ado, let me introduce Trevor Thomas, who is going to kick off with our agenda and as well as introduce himself. So Trevor, if you're ready.
I am indeed. Will, thanks so much for the warm introduction. And thanks to all of you for joining this event. We are thrilled that you're here and excited to talk about the opportunities at the firm and meet some of our leaders thereof. As Will mentioned, there are several things that I wanted to do. One is to give a welcome address that talks a bit about myself, my journey with the firm. Secondly, talk a little bit about the firm at a high level with a double click on two sides of the firm, business units, what we call offering portfolios that we think would be of interest to you. One is in the space of strategy and analytics, and the other is in the space of M&A and restructuring. Secondly, then we'll talk about advancing purpose strategy. And Amy will lead us in that conversation, some interesting and compelling work that we're doing in this space that we think you will be interested in. And then we'll have a panel discussion. Our view is the best way to get to know the firm is to talk to some of our leaders. And we have a star-studded cast to kind of share their journey, as well as specific questions that have come from all of you that they're going to address as well. And then lastly, we'll open it up for Q&A for the audience, just based on the sets of questions or topics that you would like to explore with us. So we're excited about the time that we have. And with that, let's jump in. We'll go to the next page, Rachel. I'll start off on this page, giving a bit of background about myself. And as each of these leaders get on stage, they'll share their introduction as well as the topics at hand that they're prepared to discuss. So for me, starting off with a bit of background about myself, I'm a wonderful graduate of Clark Atlanta University, class of '93, majored in computer science. During my time at Clark, I interned through the Inroads relationship at Shell throughout my college matriculation. As a result of that set of experiences, I signed on with them and worked for 3 years as a senior systems analyst down in Houston. After that period of time, I decided I wanted to advance my skill set and decided to go to MIT Sloan to get my MBA and interned with Deloitte during my 2 years at B School out in Boston. From there, I decided to join the firm, and 24 years later, here I am. Been involved in this thing called M&A and restructuring having led over 80 assignments throughout my tenure for leading corporate and private equity clients. I've played several management and governance roles in the firm, culminating in the roles that I serve today, which is I lead our offering portfolio for US M&A and restructuring services. It represents a $3 billion platform that we serve clients in that space on, as well as serves on the Deloitte Global Board of Directors. I've had a wonderful journey thus far and excited about the time to come. We have some pretty exciting things laid up in the firm in that space. On the personal front, married to my wife, Dana, of 26 years. Man, time flies when you're having fun. And I have 3 kids. Jeremy, he is now a graduate student at Oxford University in London. Dylan, he is a freshman at Howard University. And my daughter, Nia, she's an 8th grader and could do no wrong in daddy's eyes. And so that's just a little bit about myself and my journey while at the firm. If we go to the next page. When we think about Deloitte, it is one of the largest professional services firms on the planet. Globally, we're about $50 billion in revenue and growing at an amazing rate. We're comprised of several businesses within the firm, consulting, tax, advisory, and audit and assurance. And what we want to do today is talk about the US consulting business in particular. And within that, 2 businesses that we think are of interest to all of you. One of them is in the strategy and analytics space. The other is in the M&A and restructuring space. US consulting today, just to give you a sense of the size and scale of the business, is roughly a $10 billion business, has 6 offering portfolios, 2 of which I'm going to cover today. One is around monitor strategy that sits within our strategy and analytics offering portfolio. And the second is the M&A and restructuring offering portfolio. From a monitor strategy perspective, that team serves some of the world's leading companies, helping them solve their most challenging strategic issues and deliver transformational impact. We do this via a full circle approach to transformation, focused on a few areas. One is architecting strategies for sustainable growth and competitive value creation. As trusted advisors, the team focuses on this term that you've probably heard a lot of around ESG, environmental, social, and governance factors into a company's corporate strategy. The team diagnoses, defines, redefines competitive strategies and business models to help companies organize around long-term priorities that remain durable regardless of future operating environments. Secondly, they help unlock business value by catalyzing technology and digital innovation. You know, technology is the strategic differentiator of our time today, affording the ability to redefine and redeploy new and innovative solutions in fluid operating environments. By leveraging analytics, AI, and the power of data, the team architects future business and technology strategies, be it models, platforms, ecosystems, capabilities that are interlocked when a company intends to grow and compete. Thirdly, it supports continuous transformation. One of my peers, Rich Nanda, is a co-author of a book that was just released called The Transformation Myth. The narrative associated with that book is that transformation is no longer a one-time event, but a continuous one. As trusted advisors, we help our companies rethink organizational and value chain structures, how to design an operating structure with the right incentives and metrics to inspire and reward sustained transformation. And then lastly, the team harnesses insights, data, and AI through our ability to leverage technology, data, artificial intelligence for innovation and insights. We help clients unlock bespoke ways to compete, helping companies better understand their competitors, their customers, and their own company, which allows them to optimize priorities and their own performance. So the monitor strategy business is a formidable one for us in the firm. And if some of those things are of interest to you, I would encourage you to learn more about what our capabilities are. And some of our leaders that will be talking to you later are from that space and can expound more. The second offering portfolio that I wanted to share with you is the space of M&A and restructuring services. Our ambition, our aspiration is to serve as our client's trusted partner to advance their market leadership position, and we do that via M&A and restructuring services. We are the huge giant in this space. We are the largest end-to-end M&A and restructuring services provider in the market today. Just a couple of interesting accolades. We've done over 15,000 deals over the last 15 years. 7 of the 10 largest M&A deals we've been involved with. 9 of the 10 largest divestments we've been involved with. We've been involved in 10 of the 10 largest private equity transactions of all time. So we are pretty formidable. The way we organize ourselves, as I mentioned, we are end to end. So when you think about that, we think of it as the M&A and restructuring life cycle, from M&A strategy, diligence, valuation, structuring, integration, and divestiture. And from a consulting lens, we play a key role, a primary role in a couple of those elements of the life cycle that I mentioned. M&A strategy and diligence. And so when you think about a particular target and you're interested in a buy-side transaction, we have teams that look at, does that make sense? How do you kick the tires to make sure that that target is appropriate? We get into those types of services. On the restructuring side, if you're looking to, just given the momentum around digitization, it often requires a restructuring of your entire operation. We help with the strategy side of that and the assessment side of that to determine what steps you need to take in order to make that strategy a reality. The other side of this is on the integration and divestiture front. So once you've announced the deal or plan to announce a deal, everything from integration and divestiture strategy. So how will you approach that transaction to actually enabling that and bringing the rest of the firm to actually realize the investment thesis that you put forth at the beginning of the exercise. And so if that's of interest to you, we have a number of colleagues on the line as well that can speak chapter and verse on this topic as well. Pretty excited about the firm and the momentum that we're building for our clients and for our professionals. And if you think this is of interest to you, certainly sign in and let's get engaged on this. So enough about me and the aspects of the firm. Let's head it off to Amy that covers on purpose and some of the interesting work that we're doing there. Amy, off to you.
Thanks, Trevor. I have to say, you got me excited about M&A. So,
Indeed.
But first of all, such a pleasure to be with you all tonight. In air quotes, be. It's awesome to see the group on this screen, and thank you so much for joining us tonight, this afternoon. I mean, acknowledging we're not all in the pitch black Midwest. My lighting is a little strange tonight. I'm sitting in front of a glass window in Chicago, and it is definitely the dead of winter here. But anyway. So to connect a couple of dots from purpose strategy back to some of the points that Trevor just shared. I'm Amy Silverstein, by the way. I leapfrogged that point. And I lead all of our purpose, ESG, and sustainability strategy within Monitor Deloitte strategy. So Trevor talked about Monitor Deloitte and M&A. As part of this work, we help executive clients architect strategies and then work with our colleagues across consulting and then across the other businesses, audit, tax, and RFA, to activate those strategies, bring them to fruition across a global enterprise. By way of personal background, I'm a managing director based in Chicago. I have been for the last more than 15 years helping our clients develop, operationalize, measure, and communicate their company's purpose. And I'm really proud to share that what began as a tiny startup practice at Deloitte, in the world's largest professional services firm, today we're advising some of the most influential global companies on how to drive what we call purpose-led profitability. And that includes the largest biopharma and the first COVID vaccine maker, the largest social media platform turned metaverse company, the largest luxury cosmetics house of brands, outdoor retailer, media company. I think you get the point, but we're at a very exciting moment. So if you can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so before I go further though, what do we mean by purpose strategy? And I'm curious if you are game and you want to respond in the chat, I'd love to get a sense from this group, what comes to mind when you think of corporate purpose? And while you're responding in the chat, I will give you our interpretation, how we're defining it. So purpose is a broad term that is inclusive of the full scope of environmental, social, and governance issues across a company's operations. It includes climate risk, DE&I, et cetera. It's important, but what we define, we use the World Economic Forum's definition of a company's stated role in society connected to long-term value. And if we could just quickly flip to the next slide, please. And this infinity symbol is really meant to represent that the intrinsic link between profit and purpose, between stakeholder value and shareholder value. But it's important to level set on a couple of points before we go further. Purpose is not activism, and it's about more than social responsibility. For example, 10 years ago, you might have heard the future is cloud or the future is digital. Today, many believe that the future is purpose, and this new form of capitalism will follow digital as the next enterprise-wide transformation. And along the lines of what Trevor just shared around what does that mean in terms of how we bring the full scale of Deloitte to bring that to reality. So whether it's digital or purpose or M&A transformation, those capabilities apply. And it's emerged today as a new tenet of corporate strategy with significant implications for a company's growth and risk profile. So I am looking to see, wow, yes, great. So I see no CSR, which is, I think this is consistent with our hypothesis that this next generation is far more conversant and sophisticated on this topic than many in my generation and certainly before. But purpose is value. I love it. So we're definitely dealing with a very sophisticated group, and I will calibrate my comments appropriately. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so you can probably tell I'm very drawn to that intellectual challenge of this topic area. And I always have been intrigued by that across my career. And really the key question of why do we have to trade off profitability or quality for impact? Why do we have to trade off value for impact? Just picking up on some of the points that I'm reading in the chat. And early on, this was not a popular mindset. I found myself early in my career betwixt and between. My first job was at the far end of capitalism, management consulting in the 90s, pre-Y2K, if anyone is even old enough to remember that. And then later to the far left of corporate activism in an early corporate social responsibility role. And just to put it, kind of put context and bring us back in time, in the mid 90s, women were still wearing skirt suits to the office 5 days a week. Business casual and the iPhone were, clearly not yet invented. And the business of business was business. Companies got involved in social issues out of the goodness of their heart with the, I think, implicit belief that you couldn't make money from purpose or impact, that somehow that didn't feel right. And I focused, my early career really pushing the boundaries of this, what's become very outdated thinking, and ultimately making a market for corporate purpose and sustainability. But over time, this intellectual curiosity really expanded to a far more personal drive on a few fronts. And I'll share, first of all, first connected to my most important role, which is mom of 3. You'll see in some of the pictures here, my daughter Jessica is 17. My daughter Sloan is 14, and Trevor, like you, my baby boy Max, who's 10, is absolutely the apple of my eye, and according to my girls, can do no wrong. As a side note, you could ask me another time about why you should never turn your social media over to your teenage daughter, especially your LinkedIn, or my lessons learned as an early investor in Max's snow cone empire. But that's a totally separate talk. So in any event, seeing the world through my children's eyes has really given me a new perspective on what's broken and the leadership needed to repair it. So I will share my 10-year-old has expressed an acute anxiety about climate change since he was probably 5 or 6. And what I realize is a very unknown future beyond 2030, and he'll be 19 at that point. And it's very poignant to me that we need to make meaningful transformational change to reverse the trajectory and really restore the luxury of hope in this next generation. My 14-year-old daughter went to Ethiopia when she was 8, and I still have a voicemail saved on my phone where she commented, "Mommy, people in Ethiopia have nothing, but they're so happy. My friends in Chicago have everything, and I don't really think any of them are that happy." And while it was kind of a striking comment from an 8-year-old, and there's a little bit of just humor in a child seeing that. So apparently, more so on the home front, she really saw a gross disparity in developing countries, which always felt very far away. And I think today we're seeing firsthand what happens to one of us, impacts all of us on a global scale. And then finally, my 17-year-old, who is facing a bizarre paradox at the moment, has built a really thriving brand as a social media advisor for small businesses. She's currently applying to colleges, and this is a key part of her story. And she's also dealing with a massive social media bullying surge at Nutria High School, which is where she goes to school. This is occurring at the same moment that I'm working with some of the largest social media platforms to address the impact of this controversial business model and grapple with the issues of mass connectivity. So it's just bringing a lot of things home for me, and really, I think, creating just a new drive and commitment to this work is way beyond the intellectual. I'm also, a great-granddaughter of immigrants and was raised with an ethos of hard work and the American dream. And we clearly see today, that dream is lost for the majority of America. In too many cases, your zip code determines your fate, before you're even born. So all of this, just to try to give a little more personal color, has really driven me to be part of the solution to address the existential issues of our time. And I'm betting, and many others are betting, on redefining the role of business and capitalism 2.0 as that sustainable path forward. If we can go to the next slide, please. And so I'm very energized by the fact that the time is now from so many perspectives, and we don't have time tonight to go through all the academic research proving that point, but I did want to share this quote with you from Larry Fink, and it says, "Purpose is not the sole pursuit of profits, but the animating force for achieving them." This is a premise that we really live by in our purpose strategy practice, that without a sense of purpose, no company, either public or private, can ever achieve its full potential. But why does this matter? Well, when Larry Fink wrote his first letter in the New York Times on this topic back in 2018, it really marked a pivot from the 50-year ethos of Milton Friedman's business of business was to return profits to shareholders. And now you have the world's largest shareholder. BlackRock had 8 trillion in assets under management. The last I checked, it's probably more now. Now demanding corporate purpose and a shift to stakeholder capitalism as the path to long-term value. So completely flipping that outdated orthodoxy. So now we see it, it's an issue on every board and CEO agenda, and it's quickly emerging as an issue for every executive in the C-suite. In turn, it's also showing up cross industry. So, in consumer-facing, consumer packaged goods companies, it's about circular economy, human rights in the supply chain, and carbon reduction. In financial services, it's about sustainable finance and ESG investing. And the list goes on. In tech, responsible innovation, content governance, and data privacy. But think about what that means for you. Today, you don't have to be, well, I'm hoping to get you excited about Monroe Deloitte strategy and purpose strategy, but in the aggregate, you don't have to be in a purpose practice anymore to make an impact in your day job. I believe 5 years from now, we're going to see purpose and sustainability as ubiquitous as electricity across our organization, across our clients' organizations, and certainly my job will be obsolete at that point. But before that happens, I would love to share 2 examples from our purpose strategy work, 2 of the examples I'm most excited about today. If we can please go to the next slide. And both of these represent some of our best work at the intersection of innovation, purpose, and profitability. So the first is an outdoor retailer We're helping one of the most beloved outdoor retailers design and launch a $30 million accelerator program called Path Ahead Ventures. This is actually in the public domain. And they're focused on scaling the number of founders of color in their own supplier network and in the outdoor industry at large. And this is part of their broader racial equity, diversity, and inclusion strategy. So what's most interesting about this work was the light bulb that went off as we mapped diversity representation from the US at large to then narrow to outdoor enthusiasts, then to customers of this company, and then to their supplier network, and to see the major drop off that was clearly, indicative of systemic issues that go way beyond funding early stage founders. And it really prompted us to bring in this theory of change construct that is more common in the social sector. And we borrowed it from our colleagues at Deloitte's Monitor Institute, which is kind of our internal social enterprise. And it allowed us to not only design a much more complex and sophisticated program, more holistic, it created a different conversation. It really connected this work to hear firsthand colleagues' lived experiences, connecting that to thinking about a redefinition of the outdoors. What does it mean to go outside? It doesn't have to be camping in a remote location, and we could be far more inclusive in that, in how we think about it. And then ultimately investment in a broader ecosystem to really start to address some of the more systemic and earlier stage in the life cycle challenges. Okay, so now switching gears to a completely different example. If we can go to the next slide. So as I mentioned, we're advising one of the most significant, one of the leading social media, now metaverse companies on a portfolio of ESG and purpose-related topics. I have to be more careful here to protect confidentiality. So I'm really just going to point to what are the three things about this work that why would I bring that as one of our two examples tonight? So first, I'm equally energized, across all of our work by the opportunity to help born social brands that are leading the space define the next leading edge. And to also help the on the journey companies that have extensive scale, and it's this and many others, really work to shift the trajectory. And I believe that a credible purpose advisory practice really needs to do both. Second, we're at an exciting and an overwhelming moment there's been so much talk, especially coming out of CES, but so much talk in the last few months about the metaverse and the next generation of computing. And, we are really at this juncture where we can consider some of the very hard lessons learned from the social media experiment in proactively addressing things like responsibility, privacy, access, and equity issues proactively as we define for this next digital world. And then finally, coming full circle, my immersion into AR, VR, which, whoever could have predicted, has been a really awesome connection back to my digital native kids and especially to my 10-year-old son. I never thought we would be, bonding over our Quest 2 VR headsets, but he's been extremely helpful in making this transition. So with that, in closing, if we can go to the last slide, please. In a few minutes, you'll hear from a panel of Deloitte leaders about their unique paths. Mine has been non-traditional and non-linear, to say the least. And I really credit Deloitte with giving me the opportunities to explore a very innovative path, to say the least. It's led to a lot of firsts. I had a chance to shape most of the roles I've held, clearly in this new market, a chance to go into an internal role and come back to a client-facing role, and then ultimately became one of the first partners promoted specifically in purpose strategy. And so all of that really led me to this moment. And I'm just feel incredibly grateful for what's happening in the market and what's happening, the commitment the firm's putting behind corporate purpose and ESG. I've been referring to it more as the end of the beginning, because in many ways, I do feel like we're just getting started. And so with that, and I'll leave you with two perspectives from my own career to this point. I think number one, lean into what makes you unique. I spent so much of my career trying to be mainstream because I was under the impression that's what it takes to be successful. So maybe not in the nature of the work I was doing, but sort of how I was showing up in showing up at work or in those roles. And it's ironic that, only in the last couple of years, I've found embracing what makes me different has actually become my superpower as a trusted advisor to my clients, as a mentor to the women and men, frankly, on my team. And sometimes it's given me an edge. I don't know how many of you have heard of TikTok, but we presented to their parent company last year, and it was me and two male partners in our practice. And the executives in the end cared more about my perspective as the mom of 3 kids. On a kind of humorous note, they closed this formal session, very formal presentation with like 20 ByteDance executives. And they said, we want to give a special thanks to Amy Silverstein, mother of 3, for making more TikTok users for the world. And we all got a great laugh out of that. But in any event, the point remains. And then finally, and second, to embrace the ambiguity. I won't elaborate on that further. And I think hopefully some of what I've shared underscores why I would think that's important. But I'll leave you with this quote. So Ted Lasso is kind of the spirit guide of our practice. And we all just enjoy the show and take in, some of the insights into how we build our culture. So there's a great quote from season 1 where he says that taking on a challenge is a lot like riding a horse. If you're comfortable while you're doing it, then you're probably doing it wrong. And so anyway, I'll leave you with that. And I'm looking forward to hearing from our panel. Orlando, with that, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Thanks a lot, Amy. That's a very nice story there. I learned a lot about you that I didn't know before this. So thanks for sharing that with us. As Amy said, that my name is Orlando Taylor, and thanks a lot for having me join the session. I am a managing director in our M&A practice in the consulting side of things. And I work out of the office, and I live downtown in Manhattan with my wife and my 2 children of 11 and 13. So I'm going to speak briefly about 3 things: what I do, most importantly, my journey and how I got to do what I do today. Then I'm going to wrap it up with some commentary about one of the questions that have been put before me, which is, how does the firm ensure that all team members feel welcome, included, and part of the common culture? So a little bit about me and Deloitte. I've been with Deloitte now for a little over 10 years, and I've been fortunate to serve some of the firm's largest clients and most critical clients, where I've actually worked on almost 100 transactions over the course of my 15 plus years of experience across the entire M&A lifecycle, which is a concept that Trevor had mentioned earlier. That's one of the things that attracted me to Deloitte, was we are a credible player across the entire M&A lifecycle. And that's where I like to play. And that's what I've been doing through the course of my experience here at Deloitte. And I primarily help clients with the strategy and the execution associated with acquiring a target company, or in other cases, selling a division of their own business to another business. And most of this experience has been with life sciences and healthcare clients, for both private equity firms and for strategic clients. And at Deloitte, you're not just in client service delivery, you'll also have key internal leadership roles. So for myself, outside of my client service delivery, I'm also on the New Leaders Council for the healthcare life sciences industry. And I'm also the delivery transformation lead for the M&A consulting practice. So that's a little bit about what I'm doing right now. But really the more interesting part, at least in my opinion, is my journey as to actually how I got there. So I'll start by saying the typical journey today, it's less and less about what is a normal or a typical journey. The norm now is increasingly less and less of a straight line, linear path to one destination. And my journey was definitely not a straight line, linear path. So that's why I'm going to spend a decent amount of time talking about the journey here. But when your journey is not a straight line, linear path, one thing I always press upon people is, one of the keys is to make sure that you find ways to leverage some of the unique skills and experiences that you had in each juncture of that nonlinear life experience, leverage those in your current existence and where you are right now with your career. So that's something you always want to take into consideration. So for me, I believe it or not, I actually started out my career after undergrad as an attorney. I specialized in tax and business transactions. And my most recent role before I transitioned to what I call now the business side of things is I worked on Capitol Hill, where I served as an advisor and an attorney to a very senior United States senator, and most obviously for tax, budget appropriations, banking, and finance. So that's what I did before I made that transition. And following that time on Capitol Hill, similar to Trevor, I also received my MBA from the MIT Sloan School in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Interestingly, I did want to point out that I tried to make the transition from the legal side to the business side without getting an MBA. I wasn't cocky, but I was fairly confident in my skills, and I didn't think that I needed an extra degree. So I made several attempts to try to transition from the law to the business side of things, but I was actually unsuccessful. And I'll open myself up to you, and I'll admit I wasn't able to make that transition. So eventually I was forced to return to school to get that MBA. I was hesitant at the time, very resistant, but in hindsight, that was actually the best career decision that I've ever made. And I shared with you that temporary setback because I want to make sure you understand that it's not always a linear path and you're going to have setbacks, but the key is to think about a plan and try to execute that plan and understand if it doesn't always work out with the first try, you've always got another at bat. So that's why I shared with you that one setback. Another thing about me, do want to say this has nothing to do with my quote unquote technical expertise or my client service delivery, but it does talk a little bit about my personality and some of the life experiences I had as a young African-American growing up in the States. Is all throughout this time in a very, very challenging professional environment, including Deloitte, Capitol Hill, MBA at MIT, law school. I was heavily involved in community service and focused on representing and serving underrepresented minorities because I knew I was working hard, but I realized that the opportunity to work hard was actually a privilege. And many of us, like the people on this call, we're sometimes not offered that ability, that opportunity to even work hard and to show what we can do. So despite the long hours and the significant amount of stress that I was under from professional educational activities, I also took time out to focus on community service. And I hope that everybody here on this call remembers these words. And if you're not doing it now, I do want to see you doing something like this 10 years down the road. A couple other unrelated tidbits. I played Division I lacrosse in college, and in between undergrad and the early portion of my legal career, I played semi-pro lacrosse in the Chicago suburbs, Maryland and DC. And lastly, I was a special events promoter in DC and Maryland for many, many years. So that's a really long intro, but that intro is important because context is everything. And I do want to paint a picture to you of Deloitte and really highlight that Deloitte is full of professionals from very, very diverse backgrounds that are more than just the sum of all of their academic and professional credentials. So if there's anybody out there on this call who thinks, wow, I never have a shot at getting into a firm like Deloitte, I'm not a number cruncher, I didn't grow up in a certain type of business environment, you set a plan and to try to find ways to develop the credentials you need to get to where you want to be, and you can make it happen. So that's why I spent, look on my timer here, 5 minutes just talking about the background. So now let's transition to the discussion question here. The question is, looking at my screen here, so how does the firm ensure all team members feel welcome, included, and part of a common culture? So 3 primary ways that the firm addresses this topic. Given the amount of time, I'm going to focus on these 3 ones. It's local office activities, in-person events, and there are a couple defined roles that will actually be assigned to you once you join the firm. So the first one with these local office activities, something called a peer team. It's like a local office champion team. It's a very, very large firm. Deloitte is one of the largest professional services firms in the world, actually. But we still put a lot of effort into making it much smaller, as small as possible, and very, very personal. We travel a great deal, but personal interactions are very, very important to the firm. So the local office champion and the peer team, that's their job. It's to give a local presence to a national and sometimes global firm to make it a lot more personal. So some of the things that they're going to be focusing on is conducting activities to help build a local office network so that you can feel like you're a part of a smaller cluster so that you don't feel overwhelmed by being a part of a large global organization. The peer team will also provide opportunities for one-on-one discussions on what's going on with the firm, or current events or current thinkings of the firm, or current social movements that are impacting the firm. The peer team will also act as a conduit to give you information about any types of key initiatives that the firm is rolling out that's going to impact the consulting firm. Another thing the peer team will do for you is we want to make sure you're a known quantity within the firm. So when you join the firm, the peer team is going to send out a welcome email to everybody in the firm with your headshot in it and some professional tidbits about you, and also some personal tidbits about you, so that we kind of personalize you. So when you come to the firm, there'll be an announcement that you join. So when people hear about you for potential project opportunities, like, oh yeah, I remember seeing that welcome email about Mr. X, Y, and Z. That's another thing the peer team will do. And lastly, the peer team, in an effort to make this a much smaller, friendly, and more welcoming and inclusive type of places, they'll also host different types of social events. And the social events will hopefully cater to different types of personalities. Some of them will include happy hours. Like, for instance, we have happy hours at my own personal residence in downtown Manhattan. We have wine and cheese tastings. We've had book clubs. We have town halls where we just view, leadership announcements together, just to kind of get together as a team. And then we have an annual big event called an M&A Roadshow, which you'll probably hear a little bit about more later on. But and lastly, the peer team is going to make sure you're aware of all these things and invite it, and make sure that you've got a point of contact in any in-person event that you come to. So that's what this peer team, or the local office team, does to make you feel welcome, to make a big place feel a lot smaller. And we also have several in-person sessions. Two of the key ones are, I think many of you are a few years into your career, so you've come in as an experienced hire, but there is a experienced hire boot camp that's focused on giving you an in-person opportunity to meet other experienced hires. You get to meet other key leaders in the firm one-on-one. And then also there are different sessions and interactive discussions where you'll get to understand how the firm works in terms of the industry focus, the different areas of the practice. And all of these sessions are designed to be very, very interactive, because the reason we're bringing people together is, again, to make people feel welcome, to make them understand that it's a big organization, but once you start meeting little bits and pieces of the organization, it all starts to feel a lot smaller. And even if you don't come in as an experienced hire, if you come in straight from campus or as an MBA candidate, there are also similar types of onboarding sessions that you can take advantage of too. And lastly, there are some defined roles that the firm has where you will be assigned some well-entrenched Deloitte people. And these three roles, the primary ones are, you'll be assigned a counselor, an onboarding advisor, and a deployment advocate. And that's a whole nother discussion about all the details of what they do. But I did want to let you know that there are defined roles that will be assigned to you. So and then it doesn't stop there. Once you actually join the firm, you're going to have tons of opportunities to find organizations and different types of activities that you're passionate about, whether it is getting involved in talent, whether it's getting involved in developing data analytics tools, or it could be even in something associated with diversity, equity, and inclusion. There are opportunities to get involved in those types of activities. And I really took advantage of that. And that was one of the ways that I really started to get to meet a lot of people in the firm. One of the things that I was stronger at when I first joined the firm, I came from a more technical and analytical environment. So I made sure that all the modeling and the standardized consulting tools development, I made sure I was on all those project teams. And as a result of that, I got to meet a lot of people in the firm, and all of a sudden the firm started feeling smaller and smaller for me. So I think Amy did mention something about go after what you're passionate about. That's what I'd recommend you doing in some of these firm initiatives. So I'm at the 11-minute mark. I was supposed to wrap this up. Just quickly though, it's a big firm, but we're laser focused on making the firm feel a lot smaller. They're going to be structured programs, and there'll also, and then there'll also be a lot of informal networking and social events. And all of these are going to be key, to get you immersed and feeling welcome and a part of a big organization that hopefully will become feeling smaller and smaller the longer that you're here. So I'm going to pass it on to the facilitator. And again, thanks a lot for giving me the chance to talk about this. But this whole concept of feeling welcome and included is a business imperative for the firm, because you're more than just the sum of your professional and your academic credentials, and a lot of that leveraging all those types of things. It's important to feel like you've got a place, you're welcomed, and you're included. So I'm going to pass it on to Ani Adams from there. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Orlando. I don't know how I follow that. That was so inspiring there. Thank you for those comments.
Sure.
Hi, everyone. I'm Annie Adams. I'm a senior manager at Deloitte Consulting. I focus on M&A restructuring, similar to Orlando and Trevor. I look at advising clients in both M&A and non-M&A transformations. So I'll talk to you a little bit about my background as well, and what some of my clients are looking at. So HBCUs have a special place in my heart. My parents, my brother went to NC Central, St. Aug's, Shaw, AMU. I saw some of the comments in the chat that we have some alums from those places. I went to Duke University. I majored in mechanical engineering economics, finished back in 2003. Did sports on campus, was in the Society of Black Engineers, did internships through Inroads and SEO. So I see we have a lot of people who come from those backgrounds as well. After college, I worked at Citigroup. I did the sales and trading analyst program, worked at SEO for a bit, did an internship in microfinance, and found myself at Stanford University. So did my MBA, a master's in education there, because I really was looking to move from Wall Street to how I can make more of a difference in the world. So, between the internship at microfinance and the internship at Deloitte, I ended up taking the Deloitte offer because I really saw an opportunity to balance my interest in for-profit and not-for-profit. And I'll explain that in a minute. But I've been at Deloitte now since 2008. When I started like many people out of school as a generalist. I got to work in every industry on every type of project. My focus has become M&A and restructuring. So I've worked on every type of M&A deal, from strategy to diligence to planning to execution, across, I think, every industry at this point. So have that broad experience. On the personal side, I live in New York City. I have a husband who also works, he works in financial services. I have 2 kids. They're running around here. They might have a cameo on this camera. They're 3 and 5, so they like to jump into my Zoom calls. I really enjoy just spending as much time as I can outdoors. So if I think about, a little bit about what my clients are looking for, this question here on this slide, with my focus around M&A, I find that my clients are looking for, not only our ability to execute their most challenging problems, but also our perspective on how to navigate the complexity of these transformations, whether it's in that M&A context or not. And this concept of purpose for this particular call is actually something that our clients are talking a lot about, and they're asking a lot about. And one of the things that we've done as an M&A practice is really think about what purpose means and what it should mean to an M&A deal. So if you're thinking about your M&A strategy, your diligence, how does societal impact, environmental, sustainability, diversity issues impact how you assess a target, how you value a target? When you're actually doing the planning and execution, how are you bringing those perspectives into how you actually go through on how you execute a deal? And really, bringing that perspective not only internally to our people, but externally to clients has been really interesting and meaningful to me. I mentioned that one thing that I have enjoyed at Deloitte is really being able to balance that interest in education and nonprofits. And I've had the ability to actually lead pro bono projects every year that allows me to connect that M&A and strategy experience to nonprofits. So a lot of times pro bono projects will be centered around nonprofit questions around, how do we think about our strategy when it comes to alliances with other nonprofits, partnerships with for-profit companies, whether a merger is actually possible in the nonprofit sector, and how do I make that happen? And really being able to take, what I'm doing with for-profit clients and bringing it to nonprofit clients has been really fun and meaningful to me. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of perspective on my background and some of the areas of interest. and happy to talk to anyone as they're thinking about careers in this space. And I will pass it to our next speaker at this point. So, Ezra, over to you.
Thanks, Annie. And thanks, everyone. Thanks for this opportunity. And Orlando, Annie, there's actually a couple things I just learned from you all on this call that I didn't know about you. So Ezra Wiggins, I'm a partner in our M&A IT restructuring practice. So same practice as Orlando and Annie, but I focus on technology. Based out of Atlanta. I'm a recent father of 2 twin girls. They are 6 months old, well, 7 months actually now, Kinsey and Zoe. So I haven't had a lot of sleep over the past 7. Actually, my wife was about 4 weeks away. Sleep stopped at that point. So I haven't had a whole lot of sleep, but I've enjoying every moment of being a father of 2 twin girls. Background, I went to school at Auburn, was in computer engineering. And then once I left there, I decided to go work at ExxonMobil and get into the oil and gas business. And basically, I was a computer engineer that worked on a lot of platforms. So basically, I basically would stand up all the technology and infrastructure for a lot of these rigs and oil platforms, basically, just to start running. So that's essentially what I did for a couple of years. And then I got a bug to get on the business side of it. So I decided to go get my MBA in Houston. I was in Houston at the time, really enjoyed the city, and I went and visited Rice and really liked the university. And I got my MBA there. And then when I was there, I took a class around restructuring. And the professor was really good. It was very interesting, but I was like, I'm a computer engineer. Like, what restructuring computers doesn't even go together. But I thought it was really interesting. And in the recruitment process, I met with a managing director actually, and he's like, hey, in IT we do M&A. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, we do M&A. And so through the interview process, I got into Deloitte and started doing due diligence deals. And my first, so one thing about my journey that I'll talk about is there's been 4 critical things that that has really shaped who I am today and what I do. They were all based on different experiences. So I'll hit those 4 points as I'm going through this. But so when I got involved in DD, I had my first assignment and I was doing a due diligence for KKR. And I had to fly to New York. My first assignment, I was all geeked and excited, thought I knew everything. And I go into this meeting and I'm there to present some results and I completely bombed. I mean, it was bad. It just was not good at all. It just wasn't good. And a very senior partner pulled me aside after the meeting and he said, he asked me about how I prepared. And I was like, well, I did, I read it on the plane. But he's like, I'm gonna tell you something. Prior preparation prevents poor performance. Prior preparation prevents poor performance. And that was one of my first lessons is being prepared. And that stuck with me. The second lesson that I learned, which was interesting, was this is a very senior partner. He could have basically kicked me out and say, you don't belong doing this work whatsoever. And he thought enough of me to pull me aside and say, this is how it's done. And that's one of the things around the firm that I really appreciate is people are willing to pull you aside to explain things and help you. That's just the culture that we have here. So that was the second lesson I learned. And so as I do due diligences, I started to get on the transaction execution side of it. And in 2014, I had just finished an assignment in Mexico and Brazil. I was there for 2.5 years. Literally, when I would come to Atlanta, I would be here for a weekend and go back to Brazil. And I was promoted to senior manager. And that was a point in time where I had to make a decision around where I was going to go if I wanted to be a partner in this firm. And I said, well, I'm going to go through the pharma route. I think there's an opportunity there. and I had to believe. And that was the third lesson, is at some point, you've got to believe in yourself in something. And whether it goes well or not, you just got to believe. And there were some, ups and downs over the 5-year period, but I made it through. I became a partner 3 years ago. And that's kind of led me here. And then the final thing, as I was going through the partner process, and then, kind of getting to where I am today, the last thing I will leave you with is stay curious. When I'm not doing M&A and restructuring, I'm also serving as the cloud leader for our practice. And so I spend a lot of time with AWS and GCP and a lot of folks outside of M&A, learning new things. And that's a constant, continuous thing. So the only thing I would say is, in your journey, stay curious. That helps a lot. So that's kind of a rundown of my journey and what got me here. When I thought about this question, one of the biggest misconceptions about your work and how are we different? There's really two misconceptions. Those conceptions actually that I had when I was a manager. First misconception is, I think most people, when they think of partners and managing directors, they think of us as, we don't really do real work. We're just kind of like overhead and just, my wife, since I've been working from home, she hears my calls in the basement. And she's like, all you do is you get on the phone and you just tell people what to go do. Like, what do you really do? And I'm like, no, you don't understand. You have no idea. You don't get it. It's more than just telling people what to do. I spend so much time, not just strategy, but building execution, like of how to get there. As an example, last year I had a client, large pharma client. They came to us and said, hey, we just did this $40 billion deal. And we need to save $1 billion by the end of the year. Can you make that work? We were like, yeah, I think we can make that work. We can figure that out. And essentially, we created a strategy. Multiple folks involved, tax, everybody. We created a strategy. And this past December, over the holiday, they saved $1.2 billion. And it wasn't just about the overall strategy. We literally had to write specific plans around how they were going to do it. Literally, I was on a piece of paper like this, writing, here's how you're going to take your tablets. You're going to make those tablets. You're going to put them in packets. Those packets are going to go into a pack. That pack's going to go into a truck. That truck's going to go to this warehouse. That warehouse is going to go to Newark. It's going to get put on a plane. Then it's going to go to Sweden. It's going to move over to this country. Like literally, you had to write them. This is how it's going to be done. So there's always this misconception that PMDs and maybe even in all that we're just strategy folks. And it's like, no, we get into execution and make things real. And I think the second thing, and this was also a misconception of mine when I was a manager, was that we know it all. Like it's all on you, and you have to be the one to do it. And that's not true at all. I was just on a call last night with a tax partner for 2 hours, talking about we're helping a large pharma do a $17 billion split, and we got to figure out how to help their finance organization separate in a 1.5 years. And I had to spend 2 hours just learning about tax. And I'm not a tax person. I really don't like tax. But after that call, I know a little bit more now. But it took a lot of collaboration, working with tax, working with supply chain. I work with people in the cloud space. So a lot of what we do, we don't just do it by ourselves. We have to collaborate with a lot of folks. So although it feels like when we go into these meetings that we know all the answers and we know everything, but the reality of it is it takes a lot of collaboration, a lot of phone calls, working together to get anything done. That's something that I think people that gets missed a bit as a misconception. So yeah, that's my story. Those are some of the misconceptions I've seen in the firm, and there's several others, but those were two that came to mind.
Our next speaker is Carolyn. Carolyn, if you're ready. Make sure. Let me make sure.
She's muted.
Let's see.
think
Carol.
she was.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was stuck on mute. Hi, everyone. I'm Carolyn Smith. I'm a senior manager in the monitor Deloitte practice. I'm based out of the Pittsburgh office, so I'm actually born and raised in Pittsburgh. I went to the University of Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh is something that's very near and dear to me. So if there's any Pittsburghers out there, shout out to all of you. I even convinced my husband to stay in Pittsburgh despite the cold and him being from Lagos, Nigeria, and him swearing he was going to leave the city after grad school. Personally, I'm very passionate about food sustainability, food dignity. In my free time, nights and weekends, I have a small food startup with my husband where we make small mini savory pies. That's a story for another day. And I also serve on the board of my local food bank. So it's, again, really passionate about food sustainability. I've been at Deloitte 8 years now. I've grown up here at the firm. I joined right out of grad school, and I'm what they call in the firm a lifer. Someone who started right out of school and has been going up the ladder ever since. I started as a consultant. I'm now a first-year senior manager, and I have grown throughout that process. I can talk to you a little bit about that when I address the question here on the screen. My work is primarily in the healthcare space. A lot of my clients are large academic health systems, large health plans. I've also done some federal government work, both here in the US and internationally, which has been extremely rewarding. And again, as you grow up in the firm, you do lots of different things, especially younger in your career, you get to kind of run across the spectrum of things to do. Not really, now that I'm more senior, I'm starting to focus, but starting out here, really the beauty was the ability to do lots of different things that some were related to some others were not related. So I know we have lots of good questions coming in, and I want to be mindful of time, but answering the question on the screen is, during my time here, how has the firm kept you challenged and create exciting growth opportunities? I think something unique about Deloitte is you're always challenged and stretched to grow. Again, having grown up here, at each level, and I remember being a consultant, looking at my senior consultant and being like, how do they do this job? How will I ever be able to do that? And before you know it, you just build a muscle. Like I'm a senior consultant, and you have these moments where you look back and you're like, wow, how did I do that? And even now, as a first-year senior manager, I remember, again, looking at senior managers being like, I don't know how these people do this job, how they manage multiple projects, how they manage difficult clients, how are they managing the partners who aren't doing any work, just joking. But how are they doing all this? And now that I'm a senior manager, again, I have these moments of reflection where I'm like, wow, the firm has a unique way of shaping you and being able to build that muscle to get to the next level. And I think it's always an exciting challenge. I also feel a unique thing about Deloitte is you really own your career. So here you pick your projects, you're responsible for building your network, and you really have no traditional boss in the sense of having a boss. So it really requires you to be self-motivated. And again, I think that's something I always found very exciting as well as challenging, because it's very easy to be complacent if you don't have those typical structures that are always hovering over top of you, forcing you to do something. But it really, it is a place where you own your career and really self-motivated. And the last thing I'll add here to answer the question and get to the Q&A, I can see a lot of good questions coming in, is I think the other piece of this is really growth in your career interests. A lot of people come into consulting not really knowing what they necessarily where they want to focus, or they think they know. They'll do a couple of projects in one area and quickly want to move to something different. I think it's just the beauty of client services, especially as a big firm like Deloitte is, you may think you have one interest. For me was I came in like, oh, I want to do hospital, really more PI work and focus on PI. And I quickly realized that my interest lied more in strategy. I'm more of a plus or minus 10% kind of girl than get to the decimal point. So I was able to move into the strategy realm as well as, my interests. Like right now, I spend a lot of my time working in our health equity practice and doing a lot of work with our clients, delving their health equity strategies. And that has meant more of making that a corporate priority and building out that function, as well as during COVID, working on vaccine equity, setting up actually COVID testing business. So all in all, I think Deloitte is a place if you want to be challenged, you want to be excited and engage in your work, it creates just by design that experience. So I will end there. Am I handing this off to Carla?
Believe I believe that actually leads us to the live Q&A. Am I correct?
Perfect.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So what we can do now, I'll start us off with a couple of questions that I recorded from the candidates. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the spotlight from Carolyn. And for the other folks on the Deloitte team, if you guys would kindly turn your video feeds on so we can see your smiling faces. We have a few questions from our audience. And now this first question I have is going to be sort of an open-ended question to anyone on the Deloitte team that would like to answer. And that is, have any of you worked at another firm before? And if so, how is Deloitte different? And if no one has worked at another firm before,
I can start it off. Will, I think in my intro, I mentioned that I worked for Shell. And so I can compare and contrast that experience to the question at hand. Differences, Shell is a great firm. Learned a ton there, my first corporate job, if you will. But what I found that was different for me, I was focused on a particular area, focused on systems analyst. I was focused on computer science and was working on a given project. And it was a great project because one of the things I learned with Shell was the notion of strategy to execution, right? We framed a strategy on a particular business problem and we drove it all the way through execution. And so that was pretty powerful to me. As I was going through that experience, I realized that I wanted to do more in different places. And as I was doing my research around opportunities of doing that, I thought that getting a business degree would enable me to be able to do that. And when I went to business school, found this area called consulting that allowed you to do these different types of experiences in different industries with different challenges. And so for me, that was one of the main differences between the Shell career and my Deloitte career. With Deloitte, I was able to work in all industries, which I did. I was able to find my passion in this space called M&A restructuring, where we're dealing with different types of challenges, be it a buy-side deal, a sell-side deal, a restructuring deal, and scratch the itch that I had in terms of variety of experiences. And so that was my answer to that question, Will.
Awesome. Thank you. So I've got
Sure.
another question. I'm sorry, did someone want to add something? Go ahead,
You can go to a different question.
Go ahead, Annie. We'd love to have your insight.
My first job out of college was in sales and trading. So I worked as a trader, and the environment of trading and the environment of consulting, I would say, is two of the most different environments that you could be in. On a trading floor, you are valued, you make more money the quicker you make a decision, the faster you respond, the quicker you can pull the trigger. In consulting, it's more about the thought, the depth of thinking, the strategy, that the analytics that you're able to put behind your decisions. And really, while people talked about that difference to me as a student, really actually experiencing it as a professional is one thing that really resonated to me. And so if really understanding situations, problems in depth is something that excites you, that's really consulting.
Awesome. So Rachel, if you see any good questions, I'll let you go ahead and take them down in the background. I still have a few queued up that I saw from candidates earlier that I'm going to go ahead and ask. But if you see some more and you want to feed them in after these questions, that would be a great help. So this next question I had that I saw, was what are some of the cool client projects you have worked on since joining Deloitte? And I'm going to default this one to Amy because I heard you mention some earlier. But if anyone else wants to talk about some of the cool projects that they've worked on, I think that would be nice.
Well, let's see. It's more challenging to try to select, actually. So I won't be redundant with what I already shared, but I think I would say what has been most interesting to me, and I bet others will have a similar experience, is that as purpose and ESG started to move beyond consumer goods or consumer facing companies only and really become a B2B issue, And then that's, I think that scaled, that accelerated significantly during COVID and through COVID and the multiple crises that we experienced through that time, the economic, the health, the social justice crisis. And so I love having the opportunity to see so many different industries. And I touched on this a little bit at the beginning of my talk, but we, having led the ESG strategy for one of the largest biopharma and COVID vaccine makers, similar to, we've talked about multiple media companies and traditional media companies. What I find so striking in my work is while the issues are so different and the cultures so different across industries, even obviously across companies, but certainly across industries, the dynamics and the how this is evolving is almost identical. So anyway, I could certainly share more if specific anecdotes, but that's what comes to mind when you ask that question. I don't know if others have thoughts.
I think I'm grateful.
Okay, I'll drop in a quick one. Actually, I had a very interesting project right around the beginning of COVID. It was an operational integration of 3 community service organizations. One organization had significant amount of boots on the ground through all the universities throughout the country. The other organization had a very, very strong online presence, technology, online content. And the third organization had star power. They had access to all the celebrities. And because of COVID, the main organization, actually was called Peer Forward, they couldn't mobilize or leverage any of their boots on the ground. So we had a short-term operational integration where normally I'm integrating commercial organizations for the lifetime. Here, it was something that we thought would be maybe for a year, but actually it's going on 2 years now, where we integrated the technical capabilities of OpportunityNet, combine that with the boots on the grounds know-how of the other organization called Peer Forward, and then leverage the star power of the third organization, Reach Higher, all to further the community service purpose, focused on addressing this thing called the summer melt for underrepresented minorities. And it was a really, really interesting project. It's something I really was surprised that I was actually doing in a paid role like this, but it was very fulfilling, but interesting at the same time.
Awesome. Ezra, did you want to add one?
Yeah, I would say the one that I did, I was working, it was actually outside of pharma. I was doing a divestment of 9 different countries for a global bank. And I had to go to Mexico City and Brazil to actually execute it. And I didn't know Portuguese and I didn't know Spanish at all. They didn't know how to do this whatsoever. And I didn't know much about core banking. I knew technology, but not core banking. So part of it was kind of, to my curiosity point, was I learned a lot about core banking. It was a learning experience. 1, 2 was just being uncomfortable being in a different culture, living in a different place. And I'd be in meetings and I'd have to speak. Somebody would have to interpret, and the other person would have to understand it. They'd speak, interpret, give back to me. And then there was some time where people said kind of the wrong things, and things got it didn't get sideways. Could have went sideways, but people saw the humor in it. But just the challenge of that, and the fact that this was very important to the CEO. In fact, the CEO was there many times, and it was a huge, big impact to this bank, and we've had have relationships with them since then. So that was like, I'd probably say the most exciting one that got to visit quite a few Latin American countries.
That actually leads into another question that was asked a little bit earlier by Makia Carter. And I think this will also address some of the questions. So we have quite a few M&A professionals that have joined us this evening, right? So I definitely wanted to ask this question on behalf of Makia, but I think some other folks will benefit as well. And the question was, does the M&A work of a big 4 such as Deloitte differ from the M&A work of an investment bank? So if there's anyone that can volunteer to touch on that.
Yeah, I'll touch on, I'll say unequivocally yes. And the reason why is I did, before Deloitte, I was in distressed M&A and restructuring. And the restructuring you do there is very, very different. It's almost not related at all to the kind we do in the M&A OP for restructuring. And the M&A work there is more typical investment banking M&A, but it's all focused on distressed companies. And I mean, the analysis we did there, a lot of it was valuation. Like, how much should I pay for a target, or how much is my division worth? And there was a lot of financial modeling in terms of like discounted cash flow, some of the parts analysis, comparable company analysis, precedent transaction analysis, comps, those types of things. And a lot of it was financial statement level analysis versus when I'm at Deloitte, I am deep down in the numbers where I am dealing with the, second in command of the CFO and the controllers, and not down to the trial balance level, but in the much, much deeper level of the numbers. And the analysis typically is not about valuation, but it might be, for me, many times it's, what is the standalone cost to run a division that I'm going to sell? Or what types of cost savings can I generate when I combine two businesses? Do I need two HR departments? Or I defer to somebody like Ezric. Do I need two IT systems? Probably not. So what are the savings associated with that? So I'd answer the question. Those are different questions than what bankers are answering. So I'd say the work and the focus is different. We team together. Many of my transactions, we're working with investment bankers, lawyers, and the consultants. And also, one of the things that attracted me about Deloitte, I also work closely with our accounting colleagues too. So I'd say in my experience, the work is very different. Just a same deal, but very different focus.
Yeah, I would characterize it. Orlando is absolutely right. Based on the space in which he plays, it's very different set of services. But I would say in the context of the broader life cycle, we actually have an investment bank within our advisory business, not in consulting, but it's in our advisory business, where it's not like the big bulge bracket banks. We focus on the sell side for middle market companies. So those set of skills within the broader context of what we call the green dot Deloitte firm exists, but where you sit along the life cycle, you may have a very different experience. So that's one. Two is, I think it's important for all of you to understand, to be a successful consultant, understanding the entirety of the life cycle and where things fit within that, you can be a better advisor to an executive. Because if you've experienced that entirety of the life cycle, you can advise him or her based on where they are in the process, what to expect next. What are some of the pitfalls that happen? What are some of the lessons learned that you don't have to deal with? Because we've done this, the stat that I mentioned, 15,000 transactions over the last 15 years. Having that experience set in an organization can advise our client to be the most successful that they can be by leveraging the experiences that we have as an enterprise.
Awesome, awesome. So I want to get Carolyn involved, and so I got a question that I think you can help answer. So this question came from Lauren Nelson, one of our candidates. And that is, what would you say will be the most challenging part of going to work with new clients who may not be accustomed to your systems or processes?
Well, in healthcare, like we come across that quite a bit. I mean, it's all the industries. Healthcare is one that is slow to adopt. So oftentimes when consultants come in the door, there's a lot of resistance to change, a lot of resistance to the speed in which we move, a lot of resistance to, our approach to project management and advancing work. I think really what we have to do is help them understand that we're there to help, and that we are, there for a purpose, that we're there to partner with them to help, to help move things along in a faster way. I'm in a client right now. It's a rural healthcare system. It's actually a sweet spot between strategy and M&A. We actually help them create a JOA between the health system and the School of Medicine. And it's just very slow to move. They're like, okay, what does this mean for us? How are you going to help us? And it's really been a challenge with first getting their executives on board in our process. They want the answer. They're kind of, drowning in the fact there's a process to things. We're helping them design their leadership team. And part of it is, hey, we have to sit down and actually think through how our decision rights going to be, divvied up across your leadership team. What is the leadership team going to look like? And they're just like, just tell us the answer. And some of it is, making sure they're aware of the process, walking them through that process thoughtfully, as well as, making sure they know we're their partner. Yes, we have a lot of experience, we're bringing industry experience with us, but that's just a piece of it. So it's partnering effectively, bringing them along in the process and just making sure that they're aware that we're there to help. So in healthcare, we come across that quite a bit.
I'll say this question hit me when you asked that question, because I have a client now. We had a 2-hour workshop. They've never used consultants at all. And the CIO told me before the meeting, she texted me, she said, I want you to go to this workshop. I want you to be very critical of them. And so I'm like, okay, they don't like consultants and you want me to come in here and rip their plans apart in front of all of their colleagues. And I had to do that actually today. But there's a balance, and I got to work with these people next week. So there are times where, the folks at the top, you all are on the same page. But when they're not used to working with consultants, there's a balance. And sometimes you got to be a little bit bold to really get the credibility and then come back behind and be a little soft. So it is a soft balance. But when you asked that question, I was like, today I was in this for 2 hours. And, very, very interesting 2 hours, to say at least.
So I've got sort of a current events question. And I saw some of the candidates touch on this. How has COVID-19 and the pandemic changed the way you work? And I want to lead that into, where are the opportunities now, like physically, for folks that work for Deloitte? So I'll open that up to the entire panel.
Dramatic change. Think March 2020, when the lockdown started to occur in the US, we, within the span of a week, went from an environment where we use this term 3-4-5, where we spend 3 nights at the client, 4 days at the client, the 5th day in the office, to completely virtual.
Okay.
And did that literally in a week. And so that started our journey of what we call the hybrid model, where we had to rethink how we do this going forward. Thankfully, because of many smart and capable individuals, all of whom are on this line, and many others, we were able to successfully do that. We have the technology to enable it, and we did the hard work around this. Now you fast forward it, 1.5, 2 years, and we've evolved our thinking around what this hybrid model means. And I think it creates an opportunity for us to really, we call it the future of work. It actually has accelerated that for us quite a bit, where we're giving our practitioners preference in terms of on-site versus virtual, becoming more intentional around the life experiences of our professionals, to be able to enable them to do the things that they want to do and need to do around this. It's also impacting our clients. We're still, as we all know, engaging in this virtual environment because the pandemic is not yet over, but we are evolving how we do things, leveraging technology and the smarts of our professionals to think of new ways to evolve how we do work and engage our clients around this. Given the pandemic now, we're starting to evolve back in terms of traveling a little bit more. Certainly with Omicron, it kind of paused it a bit more, but we're doing things, for example, where we used to be on site, 3 or 4 days a week. We say maybe it's 1 or 2 days. Maybe it's every other week. We're working hand in hand with our clients because they're going through the same challenge. With anything with this pandemic, has been the great equalizer. It's not only impacted us, it's impacted everyone. And so everybody is thinking through, how can we best engage in this? We've been quite successful. When you think about the M&A market in 2021, it's been the largest M&A market ever. $5.7 trillion of deal value globally, when on average has been in the 3-ish trillion range. And we've been able to execute without a beat around this. I think this is going to be a permanent change in terms of how we work. I think the travel 100% every week will happen in some cases, but that won't be the norm. I think we're developing the new norm as we speak, and taking, quite frankly, the ideas from our practitioners to help shape our thinking in terms of how we evolve it in the days, weeks, months, years to come. Exciting times.
Definitely, definitely. So thanks for that insight, Trevor, and to our Deloitte panelists. But for the sake of time, what I like to do is talk about some next steps, because apparently there is a lot of interest from the folks that have joined us this evening, because almost everybody has stayed on for the entire event. So I want to thank you all for that as well. So Rachel, if you want to pull up that last slide, I'll speak to some of the next steps for our candidates that are interested in opportunities with Deloitte. And if you don't have it, don't worry. Okay, cool, perfect. All right, so right about now, someone on the Deloitte team will drop a link so the link will be provided in the chat to learn more about strategy and M&A and restructuring careers. So if someone on the Deloitte team is ready to drop that link in the chat, for all of the candidates, please take advantage and follow that link. But we will also send it out afterwards via email. So if you can't access it in the chat, don't worry, we'll get that from the Deloitte team and we'll share it via email. And then also, if you're interested in applying for strategy roles, feel free to send an email to stratcareers@deloitte.com. And if you're interested in applying for M&A and restructuring roles, email usmanda careers@deloitte.com. So I'll drop that in the chat for everyone who may need to see that. And then we'll also, like I said, send that out via email post-event. But let me be the first to thank everyone for joining us as I drop this in the chat real fast, in case you guys need to see that. But let me be the first to thank everyone for joining us. This event was definitely had a great turnout, some great questions, some great engagement. As I always say, feel free to network with our panelists and the Deloitte team via LinkedIn. And then also look for an email from us with those next step instructions that I just touched on. But let me also thank the Deloitte team, not only to our panelists for taking their time out to volunteer to share their experiences and to give you a little bit of a glimpse inside and sort of under the hood of what it's like to work for Deloitte, but also to those folks on the Deloitte team that helped to put this together by reaching out to my team here at HBCU Connect. So I want to thank you all. And before we go, I have one last request. For those of you that are comfortable with it, if you want to turn on your video feed, we can do a group shot. I can get your smiling faces and get a picture of everyone for this event. So with that being said, if you'd like to turn your camera on, I'm going to remove all the spotlights, hopefully including myself. We put it in gallery view. We'll go ahead and get that screenshot. So everybody wants to turn on their video feed. On the count of 3, I'll go ahead and get a screenshot. So say cheese. 1, 2, 3. Thanks, everyone. I really appreciate you. If you guys didn't come to our events, we could not make these events possible. So this helps perpetuate these opportunities for more diverse candidates in the future. And again, thanks to the Deloitte team for partnering with HBCU Connect to provide these opportunities. Make sure we have your resume as well. So if you want to reply back to my email or just go to hbcuconnect.com/Deloitte, we will share those resumes with the Deloitte team tomorrow. And then you can look forward to hearing, some of you can look forward to hearing back from the Deloitte team. And then we'll also follow up with those instructions if you'd like to go ahead and apply directly. Thanks, everyone, and have a great evening. Take care.